Welcome to session 11 of the Your Way Recovery Program. Congratulations, you are almost complete with the first stage of the program, which is really just to introduce you to what is possible. In the next stage, we'll really dig into the work of making permanent change. So I hope you've enjoyed the journey so far. As we move into today's centering practice, I would like you to grab a piece of scratch paper. It doesn't need to be much. It can be an envelope or the back of a note. Just use something that you don't mind discarding when we're done. If you don't already have something you can use for writing, please pause the video now and get what you need. As we near the completion of the first 12 weeks of this program, I would like to introduce you to a practice I call shredding it. We'll begin the practice with our centering, and then I will introduce the take-home tool, and then that will be followed by another video from the brain chemistry class. And then at the end of the brain chemistry class, I will complete giving you information on the tool. It's a little different order than we usually do, but this is a practice that can help you increase your gain from any class you take. So what you're going to do is have an opportunity to use the tool while you're watching the video. So to begin the centering, just invite you to take a few deep breaths. Breathe deep into your belly and just let go of everything from your day. Take a second breath and remember to slow down. Take time with your breaths. As we move on to the third breath, be willing to let your entire system slow down. It sends a message to your brain that you're in a place where you can relax. Continue breathing. Until we've taken about 5 to 10 deep breaths. Anytime you can pause during the day and take 10 deep breaths. It gives your body this opportunity to reset, to relax, to let go of tension, to loosen up anything that might be tight. As we continue with the centering, I'm going to begin with a process called free writing. You can do this anytime by starting a timer. What I'll do is on this video, I'll actually leave the video playing with no sound for 2 to 3 minutes. And during that time, I'd like you to write or draw. You can use words or shapes that articulate any strong feelings you have right now or that you've had this week. You could have anger or pain. It might be fear or judgment. You could also have joy or peace, or excitement and bliss. Whatever your feeling is, write it out. Use words or pictures or colors, marks. However it comes to you, let it out. And even if you feel complete, continue to let it out. Continue for the whole 2 to 3 minutes. Do not do more and do not do less. Whether you feel you are empty or overflowing, allow yourself only 2 to 3 minutes to do the exercise today. So I'm going to allow you to do that now. Again, I will allow the video to continue to run for 2 to 3 minutes, and you can use it as your timer. Every wound any being on this earth inflicts upon another, it does to create safety. And as much as our fear can look like fear, it can also look like pain or judgment or even aggression. Our ideas about how things should be are limited to the perception we hold of the world. They are limited to the rules we learned as children about how to survive. They are not the truth of who we are. In order to evolve, we must be willing to let go of both the pains and the blessings of our past. We must let go of who we've been and even who we've always wanted to be. We need to release those who have hurt us and even those who have loved and comforted us. The rest of our life begins in this moment, and in this moment we can be whoever we want to be. You can use life as a measure, but don't let it be your rule. Life is filled with possibility. Now is the time to see what is next. Now is the time to experience the unfolding of life. Now is the time to choose our paths. Always, We can choose to go where we have always been, or we can choose to walk in a new direction. And even if we choose not to decide, we still have made a choice. Ask yourself, what is my choice today? Where am I going with my life? Only I can know. Now take a moment and look at what you've written. You don't need to read it or judge it. Just notice it. Recognize it. And now allow yourself to shred it. Tear it into pieces. Feel the freedom or the loss you feel in releasing it. Again, this is a creation of yours, so letting it go may be difficult, but you are full of creation. You will make more. Allow yourself to let go and connect with the feeling. Connect with how it feels to let go. If you are just doing the centering exercise for your practice today, you can pause the video here and complete the session 11 centering practice, shredding it. Where are you going with your life? What is your choice today? Where are you going with your life? Only you can know for sure. As you are ready to continue with your practice, I would like to introduce you to another way of using shredding it to increase your ability to learn anything quickly and easily. So the great thing about this practice is you don't necessarily need to use and shred paper. You can, and I had you do it in this exercise so you could feel the power of the release. But as you continue, you can do the practice on your phone or computer. All you have to do is hit a delete button. So the real concept of it is about not holding on to things. So the first step of the practice, as we continue into this next stage, is to take notes. And that's it for now. The history behind this is that I've led groups for a long time, taught classes, and I've noticed, though, I give a lot of really heavy information in my classes, a lot about the brain, a lot of details, and it can be a lot to absorb. And I watch as a lot of people sit and fall asleep as they're listening to me. Taking notes not only helps you engage and stay awake, it makes the prefrontal cortex more active. So the prefrontal cortex being active is what keeps you awake. But because it's active, you are more likely to retain and use the information you gather. And so we won't stop here. There will be more to the practice, and I'll explain the next step after the video. But I'd like you to use the first step of taking notes while you watch the next video of the brain chemistry course. And then at the end, I'll let you know what I want you to do with those notes. So again, you can use paper, you can use your computer or phone. Just take notes as you watch the video. So good luck, and I hope you enjoy the lesson. So just to review phase one, again, we want to understand that all of our thoughts, feelings, emotions are byproduct, not cause. So if you're stressed, you're triggered, you can get yourself out by one of the practices. The second thing is we want to be able to be adept at moving from a fight or flight state to a rest and digest state at will. We want to be able to enter it and maintain it. Now, a lot of people rush through phase one really fast because They want to be out of the fight or flight, I think, mostly. But really being able to establish the skill of being able to recognize your life as byproduct is so important. And being able to have anything happen to trigger you and to be able to pull yourself out of that trigger instantly is really critical. Even healthy rest and digest mechanisms keep us in dependency, or we're dependent upon the mechanism. So it's really important that we pull ourselves out of fight or flight, but we don't want to stay in rest and digest. This is what we've been doing our whole lives. We get triggered, we pull ourselves out. We get triggered, we pull ourselves out. Some of our mechanisms are healthy, some aren't, but we've been spending our whole life doing this. We need to break the pattern. Like you said, Judy, when you were walking, the calming music was just rest and digest. It doesn't break the cycle, right? So what we want to do is learn, how do we truly break the cycle? So what we have to remember is that the sensory trigger affects the release of chemical, which puts us in these different states of consciousness, which then results in the life experience that we're having, right? Now, a lot of things out there want to approach the light of life experience, want to approach the state of suffering, want us to work, try to be positive, work on your boundaries, do all these things. These things can work, but they are arduous and incremental, because what we're trying to do is change a brain function from the condition that brain function makes. So it's kind of like what I think it was Einstein that said it, that you can't solve a problem from the thinking that created the problem, right? And so we're in this state and of suffering, and we're trying to address it from the state of suffering. That won't work. And then there are a lot of systems that want to work at the state of consciousness, right? But again, the state of consciousness is as much byproduct. So to try and address the state of consciousness that's causing the suffering in life is not going to work well. Oops. So again, where we really want to work is at the level of chemical. The chemical is the thing that's either the problem or the solution, depending on your experience of the chemical, right? The chemical is everything. So what we need to do is we need to address the sensory trigger, because the sensory trigger is what's driving the chemical. Now, the sensory trigger is completely unconscious. So we have to use a program that develops an unconscious effect on the brain. So we want to go back to talking about where triggers begin. So again, we can't tell the neurons don't fire that chemical when you get that information. That's going to be impossible. At a sensory level, to try again to break down those cycles of what was the original trigger that caused this, the grab on the arm, or what people call body memory, which is just really a neural connection that says, when this happens to my body, this is going to happen next, and so I'm going to trigger based off of that. So, again, if I get that arm grab, I'm going to get attacked, so my brain's going to try and warn me. But if I walk in a house and smell brownies cooking, I may think I'm going to get a brownie, right? And then I may get happy. If it's a brownie that's good for me. Which they do have them, which is lovely, where I don't have to eat refined sugar, or I can even be vegan. There are a couple places that have really good ones. Anyway, so that sensory information says something good is going to happen, right? So what we really want to approach is the memory. Now, here's the issue with approaching the memory. There are, again, those 3 levels of memory, right? There's the primal. So literally approaching something like trypophobia or something like fear of snakes or something like that, that memory's been there for a long time. So try and address that memory and alter the original rule of that memory is, again, going to be arduous and incremental. The second thing is personal experience. Therapy gave me my life. I literally was trying to die. I had had a near-death experience when I was 15, and I didn't want to come back. I didn't want to be alive. My life was horrible. It was horrible. I had no reason to be here. I didn't have one single thing that I felt was a reason to be alive. So I was mad when I lived. I was really mad about it. So I spent the next 8 years trying to kill myself. I was wild. I was completely out of control because I was just continually trying to die, right? And so in that state, I don't want to go back. and process those memories. There was a beautiful moment for me in therapy that I grabbed hold of that I don't know how much my therapist enjoyed it, but it was a really profound moment for me when she said, you don't have to remember to heal. A lot of times we don't have memories, and a lot of the reason why is because our prefrontal cortex shuts off when trauma happens. So the storing of new information shuts off. So the last thing our brain remembers is that arm grab a lot of the times. To go back and relive that is traumatizing. It's re-traumatizing the brain. And it is so hard to cure conditions like PTSD in that environment. But it's kind of the best we've had available to do that. We're trying to take a lot of different approaches, but these are still the same thing. They're trying to approach a process-driven method to go back and work through each memory. Now, also when you were someone like me, I started my healing process at about the age of 23. Every day up until the age of 23, I was going through traumatic events. That's a lot of memory to process. If I had stuck to traditional processing methods, it would have been accurate. I would not have been cured. I wouldn't. It would have taken me hundreds of years to process everything that happened to me because each memory took months. And I had millions of memories. Yeah, right, exactly. And that's not the fault of therapy. That's the fact that trying to approach it from a memory level at that way becomes complicated. The other complicated thing is you're dealing with ancestral memory, which may not have an original point, right? This is where people are doing past life stuff and things like that. You have your personal experience, but then you also have your environment. I was working with a client who had severe sleep disorder that was caused by a sinus infection. What memory are you going to process? The sinus infection? It was a threat of death. The brain wasn't wrong. So how do you process through that and make the brain change it? So these start to look like mechanisms we can't solve. And so instead of specifically approaching the memory, what we want to start doing is building new sensory information in the brain. So this is learning what we can do to control it. So existing options to manage our chemicals, of course, therapeutic treatment. Again, this works. This was one of the key moments for me is when I was in therapy that made everything different for me. And that was the fact that I realized early on in therapy that I could perceive my life like a story. And if I changed that story, I felt better. I saw the connection. When we go back and reevaluate this way of thinking and I think a different way, my life gets better. And so I was like, I clicked on that really fast. I did really well in therapy. I was very good. I was a very good client. So I dug in. I knew I could make my life better. But again, it was just taking such a long time and it was a painful journey. Processing emotions at the level of emotions is excruciating. So therapeutic treatment is an option. It does work, but it will be incremental and arduous because it has to be, just because of what we're approaching, the way we're approaching the condition. Second thing existing option is pharmaceuticals. Now, pharmaceuticals work to an extent. Those MAOIs worked they made me sane enough to be in therapy because I was not sane enough to be in therapy. I wouldn't have stayed in therapy. I wouldn't, bless you, I wouldn't have gleaned the things I did that helped me change. Now, the other issue with pharmaceuticals is this. You're taking an exogenous chemical or you're triggering a chemical exogenously. So you're taking something into your body to trigger a chemical. Your body knows how to trigger chemicals. So for example, when you're triggering serotonin, your body's using the pancreas, it's using the digestive system, it's using the adrenal system. And if I'm taking something to cause that trigger, none of those systems are being used in the way they were designed. So I'm going to have side effects, which means I'm going to take 20 pills instead of one. This is true too of supplements. In fact, supplements can be a lot worse than pharmaceuticals because they don't go through clinical trials. They don't have to go through the same testing and they are unpredictable. Supplements for me have been like, they are way more extreme. My body really responds to those a lot more than a pharmaceutical chemical, like pain relief and stuff. They mess me up. So I stay away from supplements. If you do want to use a supplement to try and trigger, use food. Let your body extract it naturally, because if you don't, then some systems are being messed up. But pharmaceuticals can't give you a permanent relief. It's kind of like for antidepressants.
all of the pharmaceutical is doing is throwing a bunch of serotonin into your system and hoping it hits the right synapses. It's kind of a hit and miss thing, which is why there are so many different kinds of antidepressants and so many different results. Also, we become vulnerable because the body becomes dependent on the pharmaceutical, which is the most dangerous thing about antidepressants, is that oftentimes they make people feel better, they stop taking them, and then there's a hard crash. Because if the pharmaceutical is causing the release of serotonin and I stop taking the pharmaceutical, I don't have serotonin in my system. My body's been regulating it and stopped producing it. So if you are on a pharmaceutical, what I recommend is don't stop. Even if you're on a supplement, don't stop. You will organically be taken off. I worked with somebody that cured themselves of Parkinson's, and they had had it for 20 years. And when they went in for their annual checkup, because they have to constantly regulate Parkinson's, they tested her and they said, well, you don't have Parkinson's. And they took 6 months to take her off the medication because you have to be weaned off gradually. It's the same when I was on beta blockers. So just if you're on pharmaceuticals, trust that your healthcare professional, whoever you're working with, will change the dosage, and eventually you'll be off. That's what happened with me and the MAOIs. So the next option is the placebo effect, which is what we're going to talk about. Now, we have to understand how the placebo effect really works. A lot of people are talking placebo effect out there, but a lot of what's available is as arduous and incremental as therapeutic treatment. So I have a lot of people come in and compare me to people like Dispenza, that I'm not doing the same thing. Because again, he's talking about controlling your thoughts and monitoring your thoughts constantly. That's arduous to me. I can't do that. I'm talking 20 minutes a day of exercise to fire the right brain function. But what a placebo effect is not a sugar pill so much. We hear about sugar pills. Placebo effect means I've caused the body to release the chemical internally, rather than taking something to cause the release. So the placebo effect is actually healthy body function, right? The body is now releasing the chemical on its own. It doesn't need something else to offer it.
So now that you've completed the video, what I'd like you to do to continue the practice over the course of the week, over the rest of the week, is I'd like you to take step 2 of the practice. So step 1 is take notes. Step 2 is assimilate and articulate. So what you're going to do here is you're going to break up your notes and contemplate them. So what you'll do is you'll take a section of notes. Maybe you wrote a sentence, or maybe you wrote a little bit of a note against something I said that said, oh, maybe I could do this. And what you're going to do is you're going to take one of those thoughts at a time, and you're going to start to ask questions. What does this new information mean to me? What's possible in my life if I implement it? What doors are opening? What thoughts am I having, right? So you're going to take one chunk of notes and you're going to write as much as you want to write on it. Now, as we continue the practice, what I do recommend is 5 minutes at least of writing, 5 to 20 minutes. We talk about the 20-minute, but doing at least 5 minutes of writing. We only did 2 to 3 in the centering, but as we continue this as a notes practice, just sit with the thought of, what does this note I took mean to me, right? I've included these prompting questions and some others in your practice section for the week. But what I'd like you to do is to do this practice to assimilate the information, articulate what it means in your life, and then you'll follow step 3. So step 1 is take notes. Step 2 is assimilate and articulate. Step 3 is move on. And in this part, we shred it. We discard the notes. So too many times in our lives, we hold on to things. As we release one moment, the next naturally appears. You'll soon discover that as we let things go, we have the opportunity to fill the empty space with even more knowledge, with something new. This is about ways to be able to break old patterns. So something more is always available. So what I would like you to do is those 3 steps. Basically, grab a note, assimilate and articulate it, and then move on, discard it. And then you'll be able to return to your journal or to the practice and answer the question, what is possible for me now that was not possible before from what I've learned? And then what I'm going to have you do is continue this practice throughout the week. And if you don't feel like you've gained enough from your notes, if you're having a hard time discarding it, discard the pieces you're okay letting go of, and the pieces that you're not, the pieces that you still feel attached to and don't want to discard, take that note and assimilate and articulate with it again. What do you want to keep? Why? Maybe there's a little more to contemplate on it. Maybe you want to go a little deeper. Once you feel it's ingrained into your life and that you're actually using it and that it's part of your consciousness, it will be comfortable to let it go. So go at your pace, don't push too much, but I do recommend not holding on to too much. When we hold on to things, it creates clutter in our brain, which causes stress and causes us to feel incomplete. So many times we hold on to something and say, oh, well, I'm going to do this with it. I'm going to do that. It's better just to process it in that moment and then let it go and let the next thing come. Even if you had some stroke of genius, it will show up again. We don't lose things in our brain. Our brain doesn't lose things. We lose access to it when we get stressed. So the more stress you can reduce, the more you'll remember. So it's better to let it go than just add it to the pile. So even if you feel you're not ready, I promise you are. It's letting go of things just opens. It's always going to be better. The next thing we find will always be better. And this video will always be here for you to, if you need it, I promise. So even if you've taken notes and you discard them and you're stressed out, the video, go back and watch the video again. So that'll be it, I think, for this week. I do hope that you enjoy this practice. For some of you, it may trigger stress. Don't push yourself too hard. Be patient and allow yourself to enjoy the journey. And I will look forward to connecting again with you next week for the final session of this series, of this first 12 weeks of the program. Congratulations again, and I look forward to connecting with you.